Oh, that is my lucky number. My birthday is 7/27/77.
Dang.
Uh-huh. A lot
This
of
feels like a
sevens.
this feels like a lot. This feels like a lottery ticket day then for you. You should like go like grab some tickets or something like that because you just seem like
Right?
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Ladies and gentlemen, I am with the amazing Jesse Rene Gibbs. I got that right, right?
Yes.
Sweet. So I told her I'd hijack the show. I wanted to actually start this off with a fun little like topical thing that happened to me last night. So last night I posted on a Discord server. I'm not going to name the server. There's no point. And the owner of the server goes to me, "Are you just going to be posting in the book section?" Right now, yeah, I admit I'm not always the most active on Discord servers. I'm on a few of them, but I'm not as active as I'd like to be, just because of everything else I do. But I do post when I can, and so it's like, "What are you really out talking about?" And she goes to me, "Well, I just think you're using me first. I feel used on this Twitter because you're not going anywhere else and you're not going on my stream." So I'm like, "But I did nothing wrong. So what are you accusing me of?" Right?
Oh,
Yeah. It's kind of one of those weird little things. Right. And then I said, like, I kind of built your book section up a little bit because I was the first person really to post in there and people started talking in there, like off and on, like they don't need me to keep going. But I kind of got the ball rolling. And she accused me of gaslighting her and blocked me.
wow.
Yeah.
That makes for an interesting afternoon.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on there. But I've been blocked. I've been unfriended. I don't understand. It's like one of those weird little moments of what happened? What did I do? So on the flip side, maybe it's for the best because they snapped for whatever reason they snapped at me. Maybe it's just good I'm not there. I mean there is that aspect of it, but still, I got kicked off for just posting book comments. I was talking about the Wheel of Time and Harry Potter, and I wanted to know what the guy brought. Like when I know one of those like when you go to a bookstore and you buy a book, it's in like a mystery wrapper and you don't know what you're actually buying.
Mhm.
I was just curious what was in the what the book was.
What did the book end up being?
I don't know. I got booted before I found out.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I'll never know now. I'll never know now. I'm really sad about that. I'm really, really sad about that. Because you always just want those good little like mysteries, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sorry. It was a weird enough story. I had to get it like just say it to somebody.
Yeah, getting it out in the universe sometimes helps.
Yeah. Like it's one of those like weird, bizarre things. All right. Nope, no, no. All right. Enough bullshit about me. I realize it's my show and I can be obnoxious, but really this is about you today. So, Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, hey, I always enjoy having meeting new people on the show. So you're an author and stuff, right?
Yes, I wrote a book last year. I
Hey,
wrote a memoir about my life.
whole life, so or a piece of your life.
Starts from before I was born. I started collecting, my grandmother had a collection of notes and court documents and files and letters that she kept for years and years and years. And I was able to piece together a lot of my childhood from that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question here, so I just so I understand. It's
Yeah,
like
go for it.
by piecing together, like you don't remember your childhood. I'm just want to make sure I'm trying to understand exactly what you're kind of getting at here.
So it was a little column A, a little column B. I actually lost a good chunk of my memory. So I lost a good chunk of my memory when I was 7 after I was kidnapped the second time. So I wrote a book about it. So what happened was my mother, who is has narcissistic personality disorder amongst some other issues that she has, um, tried to give me up for adoption when I was before I was born. Tried to get me up for adoption after I was born. I eventually ended up with one of the aunties, and then that didn't work out. So I ended up back in the family group, and everybody was like, somebody has to take Jesse. So I ended up with grandma legally. Um, then my mother got married and started having babies. And by the time she was pregnant with her third, she wanted custody of me again. So she kept bugging her dad. So her dad gave her custody of me. and I went to live with the Taylors. Unfortunately, not only is my mother a narcissistic abuser, she was married to um, not a good guy, not a good guy at all. And he uh, likes little girls, and I was the only little girl in the house. So Dolores basically donated me for a portion of my childhood. And then when my grandmother found out about it, she flew out to North Carolina and snuck me home. And then because my mother is 5'10", big lady, and my stepfather is 6'2" in the military, and grandma is neither of those things. Tiny little person with a tiny little person that she was taking home. So fast forward a year and a half, and my mother has met a woman named Mary Sue, and is working with a nonprofit called WEBA, Women Exploited by Abortion. And the two of them flew out to Washington, stalked me for 2 days. And then when my grandmother and grandfather took a walk down to pick up the mail, um, knocked on the door, and I answered the door. I was 7. I answered the door, and Mary Sue was standing there. I've never met this woman. And she says, "Come with me. Your mommy's in the car." And I looked at her and I was like, "No, I don't go with strangers." And she goes, "You're a very good girl." And went back to the car. And I was like, "Okay, all the stories I heard from like, you don't go with strangers, this worked. I better call somebody." Before I could get to the phone, my mother threw open the door, grabbed me kicking and screaming, and threw me in the back seat of the car where she had my youngest brother, um, who was 1, sitting in the back seat. Because if you're going to kidnap a child, you always bring a baby with you. That's how you do it. So she drove me across state lines, which is when the FBI got involved. She drove me across state lines and called my grandmother to say, "Hey, Jesse's alive, but obviously you're not going to see her ever again." The next day, we flew to Atlanta. I was dressed as a little boy and went as Mary Sue's son. And Mama wore a wig and sunglasses and carried the baby, sat on a completely different side of the plane. We met up in the Atlanta airport. Everybody changed clothes. And then that's when the FBI lost me in the Atlanta airport. Mary Sue flew home to Michigan, and Mama took me home to North Carolina. 2 days later, they dropped me out a back window into a neighbor's arms because a row of police cars had figured out where Dolores and Robert lived and showed up to get me back. And so I was in a neighbor's house in a closet for a couple of hours. And then from there, I spent 2.5 years being shuttled from house to house to house to house to different people who were part of Dolores's ministry, who kept me hidden from the police. And at some point during that experience, I lost my memory. I lost all but 2 memories. I woke up in the morning, and I had the memory of the kidnapping, and I had the memory that Robert was a dangerous person, and that was it. Which I think it was my brain trying to protect me because I had all of these little brothers that now needed caring for, and so I was taking care of them, trying to stay out from under, keep myself from Robert knowing that he was a danger, and keep myself away from Dolores as much as possible too because she was violent. Um, so it was me, and then 4 boys, and then 3 girls after me. And then in the midst of that period of all of those kids being born, we also had 3 other kids who lived with us for about 5 years, and then a cousin that lived with us for about 3 years during the course of our childhood. And we had unwed mothers coming and going. So we had teenagers having babies in our home. Dolores didn't believe in hospitals. She didn't believe in hospitals because she was firmly believed that because she was part of this pro-life organization that doctors were out to kill her. So Which seems reasonable. So she would never take us to the doctor, didn't believe in hospitals, didn't believe that you should have babies in the hospitals at all. And so we had literally teenagers having babies on my bed as when I was a kid. Um, and I spent the rest of my life growing up in this farm in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, surrounded by all of these babies and fireflies and cows and chickens and dogs and cats and mice and a black snake in the attic. And it was just this huge life adventure. And then I ran away from home at 19 and promptly joined an inner city commune in Chicago because that's what you do when you grow up. So when I left there 10 years ago, when I left there 10 years ago, I met my now ex-husband in Chicago and got married there. And when I decided to run away from home, um, I figured if you're going to do that, you got to take your best friend with you. And my bestie lived out here in the Seattle area. And so I came out here, and that was 10 years ago. So I started writing this book almost 25 years ago. But every time I'd start to write it, I'd find out new information because Dolores would tell us these stories of like, okay, we got kicked out of a house that we lived in. The Lyledown estate was this big, beautiful piece of property, 3-story mansion in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains overlooking a river. Just absolutely breathtaking. Wraparound porch, porch swings, rocking chairs on the front porch, the works, right? Like something out of a dream. And Dolores had talked this sweet little church into donating it to her to turn it into a home for unwed mothers. And in the course of 9 months, she did $100,000 worth of damage, nearly burned the place to the ground twice, and we were evicted. Dolores's version of events is that they were demon possessed and were trying to kill us. When I was an adult, I tracked down the family that had actually owned the property and said, "What really happened?" And they were like, "How did you kids turn out? Like, we had to turn the electricity off to get you out of the house. Like, whatever happened to you?" Like, their hearts were just, like, hurting because they had to kick this family out into the cold because they couldn't hold their church there anymore. There was no way this place was gonna become a home for unwed mothers, and they eventually lost the property because of the damage that was done to it. And there's just little stories like this throughout my whole life. And so, like, we didn't even have a normal farm growing up. Like, we had a cow that
Yeah.
committed suicide. We had, a chicken that thought it was a bird that liked to sit in my coat. Um,
Aw.
I w I would so this baby, her name was Baby, and she was, I watched her hatch, and, her mom abandoned her, and so I took care of her. I was, like, 9 or 10 years old, and we were at the Loudon house, and they had a little wraparound, driveway, and so I'd get my coat on, and I'd take my little bicycle, and I'd walk up my little blue sparkly bike, and I'd walk up the hill to the top of the hill, and Baby would totter along behind me, and I'd pick her up and I'd stuff her in my coat and I'd zip my coat up so her little head would stick out right under my chin. And then we would take off. I would take off pedaling just as hard as I could, and her little head would be sticking out the front. Walk! And she would just walk the whole way down the screaming, the whole way down the hill, all the way down the hill. And we get to the bottom, and I'd take her out and set her back down on the ground and walk back up the hill, and she'd totter up behind me. Oh my gosh, this little chicken had my heart. Thought that she was the biggest, baddest little bird, did not understand that she was a chicken, lived in the house with us. Yeah, we just had these random critters growing up. We had a cow named Ferdinand who showed up on the farm one day. My mother decided we needed a cow on our farm. And Ferdy used to, I wasn't allowed to wear pants. I wore long dresses and bloomers. And so I would take my dress and I would wad it up like a pacifier. And Ferdinand would suck on it. And he would follow me around. And so I had this cute little cow following me around at 10 years old, following me around with his little star patch on his forehead, just this cute little cow. Well, that's adorable when he's a little cow and weighs 80 pounds. Fast forward a year and he's an 800-pound steer with horns this big, who sleeps on the front porch because he thinks he's one of the dogs, doesn't understand that he's a cow, tries to walk into the house, and still follows me around the barn sucking on my dress. Just and Mama got him. He was supposed to be dinner, and that didn't work out.
No, it probably did not.
No, we were not going to have Ferdy burgers in the freezer that winter.
She shouldn't have named the cow, but that's not
No,
that's neither here nor there. I was gonna say that chicken was a badass chicken. It's the baddest ass chicken I've ever heard of in my life.
right?
Like yeah, just you know what? She's like she was a fear junkie chicken. That's what she was. She was a fear
She
junkie chicken.
totally was.
Well, yeah. She was like, ah, that was cool. Let's do it again. Do it again. And hey, listen, you have to. So there's a lot you just unpacked in like 12 minutes there. It was good. Yeah, good unpack.
Thanks.
It was a big unpack. So I don't even know where to begin because I could say a lot. There's a lot of different angles we can go with.
Mhm.
I've certainly seen, unfortunately, with me my own history, I've seen the abuse parents can do to kids. Right? It's. So right now there's a lot of Instagram. There's a lot of Instagram scams going on. Just again, times are tough. People are kind of desperate, looking for different things. So I had this really pretty woman approach me. Goes, hey, listen, because I don't live that far away from her. Apparently, I don't know. It's Instagram. She's like, listen, I have a 7-year-old daughter. I'll give her to my grandmother. And we can just be together forever. Like some like some weird stuff like that. And I'm like, well, now I'm not that crazy to begin with. The fact that she like made that conversation through that conversation my way was like, so never have kids with you because how you just are you treating your own kid? Right,
Yeah,
right, right, right. They
kids are
have
not interchangeable. You don't just just
they're
get
not coached.
rid
They're
of
not
them.
coached. They're
No.
not coached. You just hang up and then put them down when it's convenient. They're kids. You brought
Yeah.
them into this world, and that means you have to. I'm 40. I don't have kids yet. I wouldn't mind kids, but the big challenge for a guy like me is like I'm still trying to kind of carve my own path as a freelancer. But even if that wasn't the case, right? I look at the fact that I look at the fact that if I did have kids, I want to be in a position where I can be responsible for kids. I don't want a kid of mine to grow up in it, and I can't control the environment that I grow up with. To a point, I can, but there's a point I can't. So I can't control that. But what I can do is I can make sure the kid feels like they are loved and truly the special people they are in the world.
Right.
You get right. That's because that's what a parent should do with a kid. Yeah, I think we'll go there because that's something I do have a bit of a common ground, and I've seen it. I've seen it when my dad's an awesome parent. Um, my mom not so much. I not so much from my end. I'm not going to go into it. My sister's got some horror stories with my mom, and and she's only told me a little some things like nothing compared to that. But even so, even what she's been through, holy shit, right? Just you can mess a child up big time. And what I think happened to you was too many like real things that you didn't have a context to deal with happened to you. There's no rational explanation why you would be kidnapped from grandparents who love you, right? Also, the fact that they kidnapped you too, kind of, sort of, right? Even if it might have been for the best of reasons, it doesn't really matter. That's still a traumatic thing. You get another
Yeah.
traumatic thing, then you get another traumatic thing. Eventually, the brain goes, "Can't
Yeah.
deal, done. I'm done." And I mean, and ironically, I mean, it could have been worse. Like you like there's PTSD, which sounds like what you got, but
Yeah. I've
right,
officially been diagnosed with complex PTSD for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. But there's also DID, dissociative like or multiple personality disorder, right?
Um, that that
Which
was one we were actually really concerned, wondering if
yeah, no,
my
because
mother had.
yeah, because it's rarer than PTSD. It's rarer, but with enough stress, right? It's even
Right.
beyond right with enough stress, it happens. Like it's Like you'd be in one of those. You'd be one of those. Like you were in a position where it could have happened to you. You had enough stress there that it could have gotten to that point.
The
So
fact that my brain was willing to separate itself the way that it did, because I didn't start getting my memories back until well into my teenage years.
yeah.
And so they talk about how children have the ability to be resilient.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is because we have the ability as small people to separate our brains protect us, and it separates those things out until we're able to developmentally understand them and deal with them. Eventually, you still have to deal with the trauma. It's just when you're able to deal with it, it varies.
Even adults still have this in them. It depends on. I've seen this with adults too. It works a little differently with adults. What happens is to some degree our imaginations can protect us to an extent. To an extent, it can,
Hmm.
right? Kids do it a lot easier than adults do because they're kids. They don't. They
Right.
imagination's a big part of what makes a kid.
Magical
Adults,
thinking.
yeah. So adults, with an adult, it's a little different. You can adults accept realities. All of us do. Now, if that reality can get shattered in some way, the adult can have a similar breakdown to the kid, depending on what that reality that is,
Yes.
right? Or depending on what that reality is. If it, I have 10 rules to life. The ninth rule is be detached from all outcomes, because that is where most of our illusion shattering can happen. Is right there. If you can recognize the fact that the reality you have in your head may not be correct,
Right.
right? And then you're open to the possibility of change. An adult doesn't shatter the same way. But if you have a reality that you accept beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is the truth, and it doesn't really match what reality is, which it almost never does,
Right.
sooner or later you hit that illusion point and you can shatter an illusion in an adult. And it can be
Yeah.
very, very devastating when you do that to an adult. I've done
Yes,
it.
it can.
Yeah.
Deconstruction is completely traumatizing. I agree.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. It depends on the adult. It totally depends on the adult.
Yeah.
Some adults can handle it, but some can't. And when you hit them with a truth they're not comfortable with, you watch it. They just shatter because they just cannot deal with the information you're presenting to them.
Yeah.
There's no context to it. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. It's I've done it by accident. That's why I'm aware that that can happen to an adult.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be innocent too. That's what makes that really interesting with adults. Is kids, you have a more of a tendency to have, like, for pun not intended, to give them a kid glove approach to reality.
Hmm.
So in some ways you can get a kid to buy along to how the world is, because you're not trying to break a kid, you're trying to explain to a kid kind of how it is.
Hmm.
Adults don't usually get that luxury. Like, me and you have certain assumptions about reality. No, they're not probably the same assumptions,
Right.
right? Right? They're not. But we're not going to go out of each other's way necessarily to explain those differences. So
Right.
maybe let's say you hit me with something I'm not prepared for. It just hits me a certain way. And it won't even be intentional. It'll just
Yeah.
hit shit, and so I'm rocked. It's much more likely that's how, again, that's the difference between the adult and the kid, and a kid's like
Yeah.
their mixed experience, right? That's just what I've noticed. But yeah, adults do have it, going back to what you're saying, but they don't have it the same way. Um, the understanding, and like I said, an adult mind has a tendency to, again, we create constructs for ourselves. We are more aware of it than a kid is, I think, but we
Hmm.
still create those constructs. And once you realize what those constructs are, right? The big thing, and this is the last thing I'll say about this before we go back to your story a little bit more. It's just, I think the big thing is adults need to realize that we all create constructs, and you have to be open enough to realize that those constructs are at best flawed, right? And if you realize that, you won't be, when new information comes your way, it does not shatter you. But if it does come your way and you don't have that in there, I can only imagine like your mom, going back to you, was definitely very much built her own fantasy world. It sounds like.
Very much, yes.
Yeah.
She was the hero in every fantasy.
Yep.
But it didn't require when you have those kind of like when um she had it set up where she could be the hero in her own story and it didn't require any actual work from her.
Mhm.
She didn't have to get out of bed. She didn't have to. She could just imagine it, and that worked well enough for her.
Yes. I'm a good person. It's a very, very seductively dangerous trap. Maybe the biggest, maybe the biggest trap of all. And I'm sorry. I mean, I know it's not my place to say a big giant apology. I mean, you are who you are, but yeah, that would be a very special kind of hell to grow up in a lot of ways.
It's pretty unique. So my siblings, so I have, like I said, I have 7 siblings, and the 8 of us don't have a relationship with her. We have a relationship with each other. So when
I was
I
actually
left
about to ask
home,
that. I was actually going to ask about that.
so I left home at 19. So it was a bit of a traumatic experience all around just leaving home. I decided it was a week before my 19th birthday, and I decided it was finally time for me to leave home when my stepfather gave me a spanking for having a bad attitude. Measured beating is more like it. But at that point, I could legitimately take a moment and go, okay, of all the things that you've told me growing up, this is one of those things that I can look at and go, this is wrong. This is where we're wrong. This is really wrong. If there's right and a wrong, this is on the wrong side of things. And so I packed my bags. I cleaned my room. I got everything together to run away from home the next day. And I went to the radio station. I was a DJ, and I went to the radio station and set up the playlist for the evening. And I was planning on finishing out the day and going to the bus station, leaving the keys in the van, and taking a bus up to Mary Sue's house. Both of her kids lived at, they were adults and they both lived at the inner city commune in Chicago. And so I was going to go there. And I figured if I go there and they tell me you need to go home, your mom and dad are right. You need to go home. If you're going to serve God, this is how you have to serve God. I would listen. But I needed somebody outside of my parents to tell me what was right and wrong because I couldn't figure it out for myself. So I get back to the radio station. I get to the radio station, had a great setup, cle cleared out my desk, set everything up, put in my notice that I wasn't going to be there the next week, all the things. And I was on the air, and Robert and Dolores went through my desk, went through my bags, figured out that I was running away from home, waited for me to be off the air, and then approached me in the booth and spent 3 hours screaming at me while the radio played in the background. And finally, Robert told Dolores to go home. And then he asked me if I was pregnant. It's like, no, I'm not. I no, I'm still a virgin. No, that's not why I'm leaving. Oh, well then you must be on your period. N- no. Does it not make sense that I want to leave? I don't want to be here anymore. I would like to not be here anymore. And so he convinced me to come home. He's like, just come home one more night. We will make sure you get to where you need to go. Just please come home one more night. I said, okay. So we get home. Dolores has had an hour in the house with the rest of the kids. And you got to understand, my siblings were my babies.
Hmm.
They were like, from the time I was like 9 years old, I would have the newborn baby in bed with me. I would get up, take the baby to be nursed, burp the baby, change the baby, take the baby back to bed every night. And I've been doing that since I was 9 years old. Um, I delivered my little sister. Like, I was there when one of my brothers was born. I was there when one of my other sisters was born. Like, I have a close relationship with my siblings. And I got home and there was a note on the door from my third brother, and it just said, "Please don't leave. We promise to be good."
Ooh.
Yeah. So I go upstairs to my room because at this point I'm like seething. Like, you had one chance. You had the chance to do something right, and you chose to pit my siblings against each other and against me. I go upstairs and I sit down, and my youngest little brother, who has these big blue eyes. All of the kids look like me, dark hair, dark
Oh.
eyes. And he had these big blue eyes, and he wraps his arms around me and starts crying. And I was like, "What's going on, buddy?" And he goes, "Sissy, don't you love me anymore?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "Yeah, Mama said that you don't love me anymore and you're going to leave me." Like, okay, that's that's not true. And so I'm trying to explain to him like what's going on, and like to a 7-year old what this really looks like. And my 5-year-old
Mhm.
little sister comes in, and she climbs up on my lap, takes my face in her hands. And she's looking at me, and she's looking at me, and she's looking at me. She goes, "Sissy, do you have demons?" "Excuse me?" Mama said that you have demons, but I prayed, and so Jesus will make it so you will stay home with me."
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I've seen those games myself.
So the next morning, that night, I climbed into bed with the two littlest. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, um, all of the kids had climbed into bed with me. Like, we were all piled into bed like kittens. And um, Judah was laying on the floor, and he had pulled a bunch of my clothes out of the dresser and had piled them in a pile next to the bed and was holding my hand. It was hanging off the side of the bed because he couldn't fit on the bed. He had just like pooped out. So he was like, "Well, I'm staying. I'm staying here." So the next morning, I get up.
And
Dolores yells at me again for another hour and a half, and I left home.
yep,
And I didn't see my siblings again for 17 years.
I can understand that one. I understand that
Yeah.
one. When my parents divorced, I'm not gonna go into my family history because there's some darkness there too, but not that, but there's things like that. I didn't see my sister for about, I'd say, 7 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, no, like no, like from when I was 7 years old till I was like, okay, 6 years. It still was a long time.
Yeah.
It was still a long time, until she was 12, I was 13, and yeah, there was to put this, it's not quite the same thing, but I've heard these games before. Here's the thing though, this is what happens with kids. You can fool a kid when they're younger, but when they get older, they see everything. They do see absolutely everything, and sooner or later, um this story I think I share. It's the only one I'm going to share as far as my mom and my sister go, because they had lived. My sister lived with my mom. I lived with my dad. I still like. I will never forget this trip for as long as I live. So I go see my grandmother in Detroit. I love seeing her. I really do. I love going and seeing her. I still do even to this day. And when I get those chances, but at the time, with the way things were with my sister and my sister didn't want to go see her grandparents. So what would happen? When we got into the car. This was after we started seeing each other again. Our families would see each other at least on a regular basis again. I watched my mom and my sister literally negotiate. I didn't say a word that whole trip. I just watched. I watched my mom and my sister kind of just argue, yell, scream, negotiate, try to make
Ooh.
like, oh, about how long to stay, what they were going to do. Like it was brutal, absolutely brutal. I had never seen anything like this in my life. What what tends to happen, like I said, is when you're a kid, you can be fooled. Like because you as a kid, you don't have bad intentions. So
Right.
therefore you don't assume nobody else has bad intentions. But what eventually happens is mommy can't hide that that she's lying to you. You see it once you see it once, kid remembers.
Yeah.
where a kid remember, and they don't forget ever. And then if daddy's violent, daddy people aren't going to forget that either. And suddenly it happens over a period of time. The kids, this is what you did. You were the oldest, or I was right. So you were the
Mhm.
you were the big protector. You left. The next one took your role,
Yes.
understood exactly why you left, and then eventually did it themselves.
Yep.
Feeling absolutely terrible, they were leaving their kid, but they realized this is the only way they're going to leave too. So what ends up
Yes.
what ends up happening and then is there's an awakening point. Now what does happen though, this is a cool thing. The kids do realize it quicker because the kids now are bonded together. What the oldest one knows. Again, once it's a certain age point, they
Mhm.
all know no matter how old they are. And that's when you know they're all leaving. It's just a question of when and how. And then it's no longer about turning kids against each other anymore. That doesn't happen.
Yep.
What happens instead is they go, everybody understands, and then probably very quietly the other siblings help them leave.
It's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So, like, when as the rest of the siblings left home, Luke, the next oldest brother, would make sure that they each had a car when they left home. When the younger ones would move out, they would move in with the older ones.
Yes.
Um, I wasn't allowed to see any of them. Like, my parents basically until I was waiting for them to turn 18, and then 18 came and went, and then 25 came and went.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. But as soon
Mm.
as they got as soon as they broke away from Dolores and Robert for the first time, that's when they started coming for me. And what was interesting was so Luke's married to this adorable, adorable little lady. She's only about this tall. And she's cute and adorable and she's got this long dark hair and she's absolutely sweet as a button and a total badass. And so she was the one that was like, "Luke, you're calling your sister. This is ridiculous. You're you've been talking about
Yeah.
it for 10 years. You're calling your sister." And so she got us back in touch with each other. And so that's what pulled me back into the family one bit at a time.
Luke was scared to death.
Luke was terrified.
Yeah, absolutely. He was scared to death. And I knew why he was scared to death too, because he two things. The first is, was she real? Now I'm not saying like in a you were real, but how he remembered you. Is he still going to be the same person I
Yeah.
remember? And the hard one, the really hard one, do they still love me? Because that's the one that hurts the most. And that's the
Yep.
fear you had. He had the same fear. But once you made that connection, right, you realized no, you never stopped loving each other. You had to go away. And unfortunately, you were first. That's
Yep.
that. Right, you're right. You were the first one to run away. And because you were the first one to run away, you were the one that broke all the walls down, right?
Yes.
You're the one that broke the walls. So unfortunately, you took the biggest punch in the face because it was just like because
I was just the first domino.
yeah, you're the first domino, but every time you go down a new path, this is just the way it goes. The first bumps are the hardest.
Yes.
You almost never want. They tell you never be like people think trailblazers are sexy and wild and romantic, but the truth is, trailblazers get their asses kicked the hardest usually, right? Because there's no context to go by. The person following in their footsteps usually does it better because they have a blueprint to follow. It's like,
Yeah.
this is fucking cool. Let me try, right? And that's how it works, right? So I know this because I know. So, like I said, like if it sounds like again, I haven't even come anywhere close to how bad you had it, but I understand some of the things you went through because I too went through some of the same things you did,
Yeah.
right? I some of them, not for the same reasons, and it's yeah. No,
The
like you,
interesting thing the interesting thing I found about my story is that in telling my story and in writing this book, so many people have come back to me and have literally gone, "Okay, I connect with this part of it.
Mhm.
This is the thing I connect with,
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
let me tell you why. Let me tell you my bit of my story and why this is important to me." And the stories of abuse that I have heard, that people have come and told me that this is brought up, has just been incredible. I actually have a friend who's in, like, going to therapy right now, and he read through the book, and he calls me up, and he's like, "So, I remembered, like, 5 other things that I had completely forgotten about from my childhood, so thanks for that nonsense." I'm like, "Sorry.
Well,
Did
no,
you
it's
like the
just
book?"
it's real. Like, the idea of a perfect family is such a rare thing. You had it
It
rougher
it it
or you
doesn't
had
it doesn't exist. It's not there's you can't be
no,
perfect because it's made of imperfect people.
absolutely, and some people do the absolute best they can, and that's and those dysfunctions they're there, but they're not horrible.
Well, and I've had a couple of people that have asked me that have, like, come to me and said, I'm struggling with being a mom. I recognize in your mother some of the things that I feel towards my
Yeah,
kids."
yeah.
Or, "I'm struggling with just the functionality of being a parental unit. What does that look like? Like, is my kid gonna write a book?" And I said, "Here's the deal. When it's all said and done, if you love your kids enough to ask those questions, you're doing great."
By and large, yes. I actually think, like, this is my opinion. This is the thing you gotta recognize as I don't think too many I think if anybody has the right to judge you, it is your kids.
Agreed.
Because they went through you.
Yeah.
So and I say it like that because it's I have a kid. Everything that happens to that kid is because I put them into the world.
Yeah.
So now, will I screw up? Yes, every parent does. That's not and my dad will look at me and what I have and everything I have to do to survive sometimes, and he goes to me, "I wish I could have given you more." But he gave me everything I really needed. That's the thing, right? There is a what a kid really cares about, and this is all a kid cares about really at the end of the day. So this is the flip side, right? If the kid really loves you, if the kid really loves you, they want you to be proud of them. So
Mhm.
very human. Like that's when it's healthy,
Yeah.
right? That's when it's healthy. And when a kid doesn't, he might still love you, or they might still love you. But when you look at the person your parent is and they don't want to be them, right? Now maybe
Mhm.
there comes a point in the journey where you understand them better. Because I,
Yeah.
I think I think I'll just be blunt. I mean, I had real issues with my mom because I kind of felt abandoned when I was younger. Right? Just the way things happened with me. Now looking back now when I'm older, there's still things about what she did I don't agree with. But I
Yeah.
understand but I understand her feelings. And I understand as an adult that she needed m mom was not happy at home. And this is what I will say to with her. She wasn't happy with dad. And there's nothing and to be perfectly blunt, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're not happy, you're not happy. They're just right? There has to be, an honesty there. Now the way she went about some things, the way, her choices impacted myself, my sister,
No
even my dad.
kidding.
Yeah, right? Um, right? I don't agree with them at all. And I'm old enough at this point when I do see my mom, I call her on her shit a lot more. I have no problem with it. Like, it's just one of those
Wow.
well, you have to.
Mhm.
You have to. Like, again, this is the thing about parents and kids. You see, like, even I call bullshit on my dad too. Like, I like me and my dad have a different relationship. We'll fight sometimes now, but
Mhm.
it's not fun. Like, we have our blow up and we're good.
Right.
Right. That's it. Right. Never blow up and we're good. I'm a grown ass man. He's a grown ass man. He has his own way of seeing things. I have my own way of seeing things,
Right.
right? And sometimes we're gonna disagree, and how we disagree, like, is sometimes stupid because we're both idiots. And then I'm totally like, I'm good with that. My father's a man, and he knows his own flaws, good, bad, and different. Like, he knows them too well. And again, he's an honest, sincere. At his core, he's an honest, sincere, kind man. Very
Mhm.
kind man. Now, I'm not going to say my mom's an evil. That's not what I'm going to say about my mom, because that's, again, that's too simplistic. Mom had wants that weren't needed. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's the truth. All right, and that doesn't make her a villain. Some of her other choices after that, justifying them in her head and what she did and what she didn't do, they're different. And by the way, Dad wasn't a saint either. Dad made
Mm.
mistakes with her too, big time. But looking back, right? But looking back, I can look at both of them a lot more honestly.
Yeah.
So when I talk to both of them, when I talk to my mom, and she tries to be the hero of the story, sometimes I just like, nope, you don't get that. And I take it because, and and I have to acknowledge to myself, yes, there is a little perverse joy in it, but the other part, but it's more than that. I recognize the part, like, as an adult myself, that I can be both the hero and the villain of the story, and sometimes the best way you can help somebody is to be the villain. And
Mm.
that's what makes a good parent, actually, sometimes too. Is like, I realize, you know, I can be an asshole. And sometimes that's useful. And that's a good quality. It's how you use it, how you temper it, how you, does that make sense?
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. Because here's how I would put this, right? You'd want someone strong enough to handle whatever comes your way. And if you're too nice about things, you're actually a detriment to sometimes the horrible things that are out there. There has to be a willingness to confront the truth. There has to be a willingness to sometimes be nasty. Sometimes. I'm not saying be an asshole all the time. What I'm saying is, when the situation warrants it, you push back.
Right. Okay.
Right? Does that make sense? But
Sure.
some of those qualities can seem negative in other lights. But in the right circumstance, again, it's being able, it's the discipline to temper your good and bad qualities. That's what it comes down to. Someone that's a narcissist cannot temper their bad qualities because they cannot see them. They refuse to see them.
No, a narcissist is completely blind to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm doing her a favor sometimes, because whether she wants to see it or not,
Having healthy
yeah,
boundaries for yourself is really important.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Yeah. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying trash your parents. I'm not saying don't be
Of
disrespectful to your
course. Of
viewers, right?
course.
But you gotta but you can call them on their bullshit too. And the fact of
Absolutely.
the matter is, I'm old enough to do that to both of them. And hell, they both can call me on my bullshit too. I'm certain, again, I'm not saying, I suddenly have my own flaws. I definitely make my own mistakes. They can say, Josh, you're a fucking idiot. And then sometimes I am the fucking idiot, right? But again, looking at the relationships of my parents, and some of what you're seeing, and again, you can tell listening to me, I grew up with some of those, I've seen those tendencies myself,
Yeah.
right? I've seen them. So
Yep.
I know, I have an idea of the mentality, at least a little. You're Robert, not so much, right? But Dolores, oh yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
Dolores.
It's really interesting. So one of the interesting things about the books is that I've actually included some of her letters in the book, and so it's really had quite a few people that have been like, "Did you? Are you making this? Did you make this up?" I'm like, I can't make this crazy up. I cannot make this kind of crazy up. It's just, it is what it is.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I highly I mean, I recommend the book just because I wrote it, but it's really fun. It comes with a lot of trigger warnings because it does have some serious.
Yeah.
Um, there's some animal deaths in the book as well as some serious trigger warnings for abuse. Um, but it's also got some really sweet stories in it, and
The chicken is badass. The chicken
the
is
chicken
so
is badass.
badass.
You
Yeah.
should hear about Gummidge the cat.
Okay. Well, no, if you got a little time left before, but actually, I'm going to go this direction. I think I understand why you wrote the book. I think I understand a little bit of why you wrote the book. There's a personal journey aspect of it too.
Very much.
Very much so. And did this, I'm not going to say, like, how do I put this? Something like this, when you see all the experiences you dealt with, sometimes you look back at all the terrible things that happened, right? And you blame yourself for everything that kind of happened. Or or you're pissed and angry at the world. I somehow feel you're column A, not so much column B, although if you I would not be shocked if there was a little anger in you because let's be honest.
A lot. So I would say it definitely started in column A and then slid very happily into column B after a lot of therapy. Because you have to, anger is a secondary emotion.
Mhm,
So, yeah, but you have to get through the anger part to actually figure out where the anger is coming from. So, unless you're experiencing anger, you can't figure out that it's coming from fear or loss or pain or
mhm.
whatever that deep seated emotion is. So yes, the anger definitely came out through a lot of therapy. I cannot recommend good therapy, good EMDR. Highly recommend it. It's good for you.
And the other thing, folks, about that too, and this is what I will tell you: anger is good to help you cope with what you're dealing with.
Hmm.
However, it's not a permanent shield.
Nope.
Sooner or later, it's not enough anymore. And
Nope.
then when that happens, you have to deal with whatever is inside you to deal with. There are people I've seen that use their anger as a shield because it does make you feel stronger. It does make you
Hmm.
feel more powerful. But the truth is, there are no matter how powerful you feel, there are points in the armor where there's chinks, and when those holes are found, it's not all the anger in the world is not going to save you,
Yeah.
right? So I speak a little bit from experience there, like I said. But going back to you, I would say this probably for you was a big part about accepting what happened to you. Being
Yes.
maybe a little bit of forgiveness. I'm not gonna say necessarily to your parents. I don't know what you feel about that, and we'll get to that before we wrap this up. Maybe yourself a little bit?
A lot of it. I had to
Yeah.
let go of a lot of things. I really dislike the term forgiveness because it insinuates that someone has been let off the hook. And I don't I don't
I disagree with that, but
I
we'll
don't
go.
I
We'll
don't
go with
love
that.
that in my personal life. There's a lot of people that use that as um, kind of their white flag, their way to move
Yeah,
on.
yeah. No, I get that, but
And for me, I felt like it was important that I was able to fully let go. So, for example, when I actually got around to confronting my parents, I was in a position to, well, to really, really make a scene and embarrass and mortify Robert. And I was very excited about this. I had planned the speech. I had it down. I had practiced it in the mirror. I was ready to go. This guy was going to hear it. I was going to blow his eyebrows off. And I looked at him. And for the first time in my life, I understood the phrase, not worth the breath in my lungs. Because it
yes.
wasn't worth it. It wasn't
Mhm.
worth it. It's, it's not going to, screw you. Be gone, long one. Not interested in even having you around. You're not even worth the breath in my lungs. And off we went. We
That's
walked out
good.
of that we walked out of that restaurant. My husband, my now husband, Alex goes, "How do you feel?" Like, I feel
Fantastic.
like I need a wheelbarrow for my testicles. That's how I feel. Thank you very much. I have just confronted both of my abusers and walked away. It was delicious.
So mine was a little different. So Uh, I published my first book for a publisher, and my mom At that point, I was still regularly contacting her, and she goes, "I'd love to read it." This was Christmas. This was December 23rd. Like, so it was nearly done. It was going to come out in March. It's like, yeah, she was. So here's the thing: she was the first person to read the book.
Wow.
Yeah, she's the first person to read it. Okay, December 24th. Okay, I get an email back. I'm upset that you didn't put my name in the book.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was devastated. Like that, like when I got that message, I was completely devastated. I went to a movie, like my sister and I, when we were living in Calgary together, like not living together, but in the same city. On Christmas, we'd go see a movie of some kind. Right? Sometimes it was Star Wars, sometimes it was Lord of the Rings, sometimes it was whatever.
Yeah.
That was our Christmas. That was our Christmas together. And so we went for Christmas. I told her what happened. She's like, and she was like, "That bitch," right? Because that was her response. Like, what? How could she say that to you? So just there
Not
were
like,
things.
"Hey, good book, well
No,
written,
no, not.
appreciate it." Look,
No,
wow.
well, she mentioned I liked the story, but it was like it was for like one word, like one little phrase, and then but boom. Then so it was like, what the like I was devastated.
Oh,
But
man.
but but at that moment, everything I ever kept buried deep inside, like just went right to the surface. Like, you know what? I don't need to hold back with her. That was literally that was and this changed my whole dynamic with her. So I let it all out. I just let it all out. Not because it was worth it for me. I need some kind of closure. This is just me as a
Mhm.
psychological human being.
Yeah.
I need closure. I was willing to let a lot of things go because time had passed. But then when she did that with something that personal, right?
Yeah.
I lost it. I lost that ability to be that restrained with her anymore. So I gave it to her. I just did. I said everything I needed to say. Everything.
Wow.
Right. Over like a period of a couple emails through Christmas. All of it. I remember again, a kid remembers more than you think they do.
Right.
And
It's
right,
true.
right, it's more than you think they do. And then that all came out. It and I saw her shortly thereafter because my grandfather died. And then after that, I saw her once. She actually came to Calgary, which surprised me one time. And we met and we kind of had it was all our last. It's actually our last conversation, really, which is unfortunate in one sense. Fortunate in another. We're different people. We've become very different people. But
Mhm.
for me, it was like for you, I got why you did that because after everything you carried, for you letting go was boof. I don't need this anymore. And I wish I had that ability. I need the to let it out. That's just who I am. So I let it out. And once it was out, I'm good.
Do you do you feel like she heard you?
Yeah. I like when like I think like when someone shares something with you, right? Whether you want to be a bigger part of it or not, that doesn't matter. They're still sharing with you.
Mhm.
That's not an unimportant thing, right? If they trust you enough to share things with you, they don't they then when people trust you with that, you gotta be very careful how you respond. I've certainly made this mistake myself, some mistakes myself in the past on this. I've done that, and I've learned this lesson. But even before this, I learned those lessons. So yeah, like it felt like it was like it was the final straw that broke the camel's back, and I just
Yeah.
boom, I was done. I was done, and I got off light. I never I other than my dad for most of the time, I got things on a peripheral. Sister got it from like there are things
Oh,
about that.
wow.
Yeah. So I suffered in a different way in that I couldn't do anything about it. And that's a hard thing, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And like I said, this is why lots parts of your story definitely resonate with me
Yeah.
because I understand a lot of your feelings. Unfortunately, right?
Right.
I would not wish these feelings with anybody, but I understand because again, any kid that has seen things they shouldn't,
Mhm.
it changes them.
It
They're not
does.
as it's not as innocent anymore. And
Mhm.
going to you, and this is why I psychologically speaking, I realized a long time ago is the Achilles heel point for me is I'm okay if anything bad happens to me. I'm actually very okay with it. It sounds really dumb, but it's life. But if something really terrible, it's really unjust is happening to someone I care about,
Mhm.
that hurts. That's
It
just the way
does.
that's just the way in. And and you feel like you're letting it happen. You're not, but that's something you gotta like,
Right.
that's something you gotta understand, but that is my own inner side. It's like, "I'm letting this happen. Why the fuck couldn't I do anything about this?"
Right.
And
If
that's a
only I was
very
if only I was bigger or stronger or faster.
yeah, or something, right? Or
Mhm.
something. And then you realize that that doesn't matter. Like, as cruel as this is part about life being unfair. Sometimes it doesn't matter how big you are. It doesn't matter how strong you are, right? Life will
Yeah.
find a way to beat you, on you, put you to your knees because there are things like there are no answers for, which why I actually disagree with you a little bit. I realize why you hate the word forgiveness. I understand it, but for me, forgiveness was never like honest forgiveness. It's not even really about the person. It's about you because to me, it's like it's what you did when you confronted your father or stepfather or whatever the hell he was. You let him go. The moment you let him go, in an odd way, you did forgive him in an odd way because what you did was you let him go. And once you did that, right, he has no power over you anymore.
Yep.
And that's powerful.
It
That's what
is.
forgiveness actually is. Forgiveness is not I fucked up and I said sorry because it's the right thing to do. Forgiveness is this happened and I have a choice. I can let these things shape my life for the rest of my life, or I can let them go and be
Just
okay with. Um, so when I was 9 years old, when my parents divorced, I ran away from home. Right, I had this pain I had with everything that happened with my family. Right, got to me. I was just at a point where I was running away. I was trying not to deal. Like you try to run away, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how old. And I learned this at 9 years old, running away from home. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. So you have this pain. So you have a choice. You can try to take it. You can try to run from it, or you can deal with it. And ultimately, you got only two choices. You can choose to let it always have power over you. And that running away, you're choosing to let that pain have power over you. Being like, or you can let it rule your life, never forgetting, never forgiving, right? That requires a certain rigidness, but there are people that I know that have that in them. The problem with that is those painful moments always now dictate how your life goes. You can never evolve beyond those painful moments. They will always be there.
hmm.
I didn't want that. What I
That's
wanted
fair.
to I wanted to be able to let it go. I wanted to be able to say like, look, terrible thing has happened here. And I had to, and this got tested. And this has been tested when I'm older. Right? I have other stories I can tell about my own little ups and downs in life, but um, but what I've learned is honest can get forgiveness legitimately has nothing to do with the person you're forgiving. It has everything to do with what you're choosing to have rule your life. And you
Interesting.
have to, yeah, and you have to make a choice of what those things are. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Right? That's what forgiveness actually is. It's not. I'm sorry. I stole your wallet and I stole your bicycle and I ran it off the cliff. No, you're not sorry. You're dumb fuck, and you're gonna do something else just as stupid tomorrow, right? But when you hurt somebody, and again, I've been on both ends of this. When you hurt somebody to the point that you've hurt them, sorry is such a hollow word. Sometimes it's all you have. It's such a hollow word. It's not good enough. But all you can do is put it out there that I I'm sorry, and I wish I did it differently. That's it. And if you're someone that's hurt somebody, that's all you got, right? But what you're offering when you do that and you're sincere about that is, you can be free of me,
Mm.
right? I don't want you to hold me, what I did to you, as something that rules you, because I don't have control over that, but I did put the pain there, and I'm aware of it, and I wish
Yeah.
I hadn't. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Wow, I usually give the therapy. I feel like I got a little bit of both ways there. Going back now to, I say, forgiving of self, because I feel like that's what this book was about for you more than anything else.
I had a lot of things I had to let go of. There was a lot
Mhm.
of therapy that went into the book. There was a lot of, like, I'd finish a chapter and then go to therapy and then come back and rewrite that chapter because now I looked at it differently.
Yeah, no,
There's a lot of
no.
that.
Yeah, no, I learned this one the hard way too. When the first time you let it out, it's real and raw, and there's something
Mhm.
really powerful about that.
Yes, you get into the zone.
Yeah, at the same time, you don't necessarily sometimes it's not, there's what I call collateral damage too. You gotta make sure that the collateral damage is not there, and I've learned this one the hard way. You don't let the collateral damage out. You figure out actually what's important in what you're saying, and when it's something so personal, that's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. My best friend was imperative in this process. Not only did she push me to bring some of the stories down to a more reasonable level, but she also pushed me to have some of the hard conversations that needed to be had. So she's practically the second writer of this book. She was my heart. She's still my heart.
Yeah, and she's also probably was your therapist a little bit in this too, a little bit.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, my absolute hero.
Yeah, she kept you honest.
Yes, she did.
She kept you honest, because some of this really
Yeah.
hurts, and it's hard to deal with that. And even a therapist, as great therapists are great listeners. At the end of the day, that is their superpower. A great therapist is an excellent listener.
Yeah.
They can't they can't they can point out different things, different perspectives, different
Yep.
possibilities, but it's ultimately up to you to accept those things. The thing about a
Yes.
best the thing about a best friend, see, a best friend has the right to kick you in the ass.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
A
What is it
therapist
they
can't.
say?
Yeah.
A good friend will help you bury your sorrows. A best friend will help you bury your body.
Yeah, but also, like, honestly, right? This is, like, the honest answer here is, um, right, is your best friend loves you, and they will going back to something I said earlier about calling my parents on your own shit. Best friends will call you on your bullshit too,
Yes, they will.
and a therapist can't always do it. Sometimes they can. Sometimes they'll say, "You are so full of shit right now. You're wasting my fucking time. Fuck you." Right? But right, they'll say that. But sometimes they can't, because there's a delicate line of what you're,
Right.
again, going back to, like we said, about shattering realities.
Mhm.
It's about what you're ready to deal with too. And a therapist tends to err on the side of caution, because that's
Yeah.
their job. They tend to err on.
Yes.
A best friend doesn't necessarily care about your
No
about
fucks to give.
no
Yep.
fucks to give, because it's not about, it's no longer about your fucking comfort zone. It's about what needs to be said. Fuck you, woman the fuck up, or man the fuck up, or human the
Yes.
fuck up. This is what you gotta do. And you're like, yes, and your best friend was probably awesome at it. And also, you're
Yes.
secretly your second therapist. So kudos to her.
Totally. And she is in the book too because
Yeah.
she's such a big part of my world.
Yeah. So I gotta ask this. This might seem like an off topic, but I'm just very curious about this. Um, After everything you went through, do you still believe in God? I wouldn't blame you if you didn't,
Oh, that's a good
right?
question.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I For everything I've been through in my life, but again, again, comparing cups is not what I'm trying to do here. I still do believe in God in spite of everything I've seen and done. In fact, in an odd way, it has made my faith stronger in an
Interesting.
odd way. But I can see it easily tipped the other way too, because it's one of those situations where if there is a God, why did I have to go through so much shit? Or maybe not you, but everybody I love. Why is that? Why did you put so many of these really sweet people with these fucking assholes? And that is a question that I like no believer can honestly answer because
Yeah.
there is no answer there. There's no good answer there. Life is inherently unfair is not really a good enough answer. And even if as someone who believes in God, I'm still going to ask them, why did you put these really good people with these assholes? Right?
Right.
I'm still going to have that question. And I believe in God. I can someone that doesn't believe in God or that God's unfair and unjust, this right here is as good an argument as any I've heard.
So at the end of the day, I believe that I do not believe in the Judeo-Christian version of God, but I
Okay.
consider myself a spiritual person. So whatever that looks like, I tend to take spirituality with a pretty good-sized grain of salt. So I would say agnostic, maybe agnostic searching.
I could live with that. I like again. Again, I do believe in the Judeo-Christian God, but I'm never going to say to you, "Come back." No, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to because so here's my like this is kind of my take on it, and and then we'll move up past the God stuff because again, whatever you answer, I got the opportunity to work for one of my heroes. I ended up living in a Mormon community. I didn't know it was a Mormon community until I literally was in the van on the way. I was like, "This is gonna be interesting." Oh,
Oh,
yeah, I've had like I said, I've had an interesting life. So, um, and I cannot complain. I've chased my dreams, and it has been one of the most magical adventures. I mean, I got to meet you, as
oh,
part of
thank
the
you.
magical view. Yeah, so and thank you for sharing, by the way. But and thank you for making me share. I don't usually share quite this much, but yeah, I feel like in this one, maybe yeah, you're a good listener too, and I can definitely tell that.
Thank
Right?
you.
Yeah. But I've seen what it's like when one particular line of thought dominates. It's not how the world should be.
Right.
I want Buddhists. I want Muslims. I want Wiccans. I want atheists. As much as I think atheism is might be the most, I think it's the most religious of them all in a lot of ways, and I really do believe that. I want them. I want people who care. I want people who see the world differently and do things differently because in my take on this is, and this doesn't sound a fully Christian point of view, but I really do believe this. If there is a God and and it is an omniscient, all-knowing God, then there's nothing I can do to like there's this is all on some level a grand design. So I have to believe, and this is just how way I see it, meeting as many people as I have and how wonderful these people are, right? I can't condemn anybody for their life experience. I cannot judge. I don't know. I don't, it's not my place. You are, Dave Chappelle had a wonderful quote about everybody. I don't need to understand people. It was in his, very controversial thing, but he wrote a story about talking about his trans friend, and in his trans friend said something really fun, which was, "I don't need you to understand me. I need you to understand that I'm living a human experience. That's it. I don't, like I said, I don't necessarily need to. We don't need to agree on everything. Who the fuck cares? I'll still have a beer with you if you drink a beer, right? I don't care, right? What's important is you're living your best life and you're doing hopefully what you love to do. And I hope in writing this that you, whatever healing that was left to heal, you've healed. And that's all I hope for. To the rest, your relationship with God or lack thereof is your business. If you want to talk about it sometime, that's cool. But if you don't, Love you anyway. That's how I look at it, right? That is my perspective, right? And maybe it's wrong, meh. So
It's actually a very Buddhist perspective. It's well done.
yeah, right. It's just one of those. It's one of those things. I've seen too much. There's too much out there. I don't have all the answers. I'm a big enough man to understand that, right?
Yeah.
Big head, right? I have a big head, a big ego, but I don't. I'm not like so. I'd rather let you find your own way. I'd rather let you figure it out. Maybe you do find, maybe you see some of the some of the. I will say this: the fear junkie chicken, the cow who thought he was a dog. I think I think those are more signs of God than not. There's a little joy, a little magic, even little good, even in a dark place, and that's a
There
one
is.
like if that's to me. Now to you, we're cool,
One of the
right?
things that I made a point of finding in the book was finding those moments of magic
Yeah.
because there was a lot of trauma that went on in our childhood, but there was also a lot of bonding, connection, closeness, um, and some incredible stories, some incredible things that happened to me as a kid that I got to carry into my adult life. Like, yeah, I delivered my little sister. Like, that's pretty freaking
Yeah.
cool, you know?
That is awesome.
So,
That is an
yeah,
awesome
so
experience.
the book is available on Amazon right now, and you can also find it on girlhidden.com.
Okay, so why don't we do that proper? I get the feeling. I get the feeling, Miss Jessie, we've had a wonderful talk and you got things you need to do or see or go with. Yeah. So can I say this before we wrap up?
Yes.
You were thank you for being a great guest slash therapist. I am actually here's my last question. And this is the last one, and then we'll do the proper plugs. This is what I'll say ask. It's 3 words. Are you happy?
Finally.
Yeah. I kind of
Yes.
want to give you. I hope you're okay with this. I kind of want to give you a hug. I can't, so I'm just gonna go like this.
Okay.
Ah, Demolition Man style hug from me to you. I hope your next book is maybe something a little more fun. I very right. I do hope. I hope that I am as I yeah. We could talk a little bit more if you do write another book, right? Regardless of the subject matter, you're more than welcome to come back if you want to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope this was fun, kind of, sort
It
of.
was. This was a
Yeah,
blast.
yeah. So before we wrap up, okay, so we'll do this properly. All right. What I want you to do is say the title of your book. You say
Mhm.
exactly where you said where you want to find it, and then how people can find you, if that's cool.
Yes. So the title of my book is Girl Hidden, and it's by Rene Gibbs, and it's available on Amazon and also through Audible and on Kindle. And you can find me at girlhidden.com and on Facebook under Facebook Girl Hidden Memoir.
So we'll do this one. Did I get it? Did I get this right? I'm a trained professional. I still never get these things always right. Did I get that right?
Looks good.
Okay, cool. Trained professional. Guys, I didn't know what to expect coming into this podcast, but apparently this was a wild story and probably one of my favorite conversations this year actually. So thank
Well,
you for
thank you.
that.
I appreciate that. This was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So 777, ladies and gentlemen, Jesse Renee Gibbs. So for guys, I'm going to make a couple little things and then we're going to officially wrap up. First things first, I have I am in a Kickstarter starting in May, and I actually got the link right this time. See, trained professional. I'm going to get better at this stuff. So, this is a part-time comics mini comic. It's actually more like a like magazine. I have a story in there. It's about a magic card, right? That gets altered with glitter and becomes a brand new card as revenge against its owner. What if you don't want to be designed in a new way? You kind of take it personally, and my glorious glitter dragon definitely did that. It's also my first illustration, so you're going to see a short story by me, an illustration by me, and some really amazing people in this project. It launches literally in 3 days. Definitely check it out. That's first. The second part is if you are a creative and you want to create content to help advertise what you're up to, I am the guy to do it. I will make audio, video, graphic, and words to actually do that. And I'm going to put that up right now so you guys can go check it out. I'm going to have a website real soon about this. But yeah, if you want to see what's like commercials made, if you want something like that, you want to use this platform to do it, you can definitely do all that. So it's right there and then. And that is that. I want to thank Jessie Renee Gibbs for coming on the show and telling her story. And to everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. I got one more conversation in Canmore before I go back to Calgary, probably for the foreseeable future. And that's tomorrow with Jocelyn Locking out of Kelowna. She makes yoga and art. So it's going to be a fun little conversation. So everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have yourselves a wonderful day.